Okay, Mr. Chairman, we are live.
All right. For the record, Doug Burwanger,
Yes.
Joe Kozelski,
Here.
Rebecca Ryan,
Here.
Tom McCormick, and are there any other members? We'll go through the others in a moment. All right, we have Jim Pierce, Executive Director, Robin, Director of Operations, Jennifer, Program Manager. Is Kevin Zahner expected?
I am present, Judge.
Okay, I don't have Kevin Zahner or Tom McCormick. Is that correct?
Now, Kevin has
No,
joined
I'm here,
us.
Judge.
Okay. I'm not seeing everyone anyway. Okay. All right, our first order of business is to review and approve the minutes of our last meeting, March 11th. We've all been furnished copies, I understand. Does anybody have any discussion or any problem with the minutes as presented? If not, I'll ask if anybody objects to approving those minutes. If not, they are approved. All right, we're going to go through the same process for the financial report.
Excuse me, Chairman.
Yeah, I didn't hear a motion to approve the minutes or a second.
You're
I'll
correct.
make the motion.
Matowski?
And a second?
Move them as written.
And Joe,
Joe?
Yes.
All right.
thank
All
you
right.
guys.
There being no objection, the motion is approved. All right, let us do the same with the financial report. Robin, do you have anything you wish to add to or think that we should especially look at in that report?
I just want to know, for the month of March, you'll notice that under other disbursements, there was the High Sheldon Wind Farm and the Stony Creek Energy pilot payments that went out in the previous month. In February, they had come in right at the end of the month, and we dispersed them in March. Just wanted to show you that. Also, there wasn't anything really out of the ordinary, and we ended up the month with a little over 1 million in the cash on hand and 1,513,000 in CDs and invested funds.
Is there any questions or any discussion? Hearing none, I will ask for a motion to approve the financial report.
I would like to move that, Judge. This is Becky.
All right. And do I have a second?
I can second it.
All right. Oh, does anybody have any objection? If not, the motion is passed. All right. And finally, we're going to have a presentation from Fried Maxick. Did I pronounce that correctly?
Yes, Fried Maxick.
Oh,
Mhm.
okay. And it's Nicole Ryan, is that correct?
That is correct.
Okay, go ahead.
And she's no relation, Judge.
No,
Okay.
Hello,
Nicole,
I know of.
nope, shouldn't be. Thank you everyone for having me. I'm sure you're used to seeing Kathy Barrett and probably wondering why you have a little bit of a different face here today. It was time for the partner rotation that's required for public authorities. So for this year and next year, Kathy has to step off of the engagement so that you have a fresh set of eyes. I will tell you, I am a principal at Freed Maxick, and I have worked on the IDA, the Loan Corp, and the Business Center for many, many years. So I'm very familiar with your activities. So it was a pretty smooth transition for this year. I'll begin with saying we did the audit this year entirely remotely, and that is not an easy feat to do when you have a lot of little documentation here and there that needs to be scanned and uploaded. So I just wanted to convey our appreciation to everybody for doing that. Robin and Jennifer and Jim's assistants, you know, it's not possible without them and their hard work, and they really made it go as smooth as it possibly could without fail, making the deadline no problem, and we really appreciated their assistance this year. That being said, I'll get started with your financials. Today, I'm going to go over the IDA and the BAC somewhat side by side. The IDA financial statements are a little bit different in that under GASB, the Governmental Accounting Standards Board, you're required to consolidate the loan corporation into the IDA's financials. So you'll find in here that we have a couple different sets of schedules. You have your schedules at the beginning that are consolidated, and then combining schedules that are at the end. So what we are being hired to do is provide an opinion over these financial statements. I can tell you that we conducted our audits for both of these fiscal years in accordance with generally accepted auditing standards as well as government auditing standards. The financial reporting for both the IDA and the BAC were conducted separately, and you'll have your separate set of financial statements for the BAC. But again, they were then brought into these statements and combined for proper presentation in accordance with GASB. The financial statements for both entities present fairly in all material respects the financial position, and therefore we were able to issue unmodified positive opinions over both entities' financial statements. If you want to go down to page 20 of the statements, I'm going to focus more on the combining statements because it allows you to view both sets in one space versus having to look at it consolidated. One thing of note this year is GASB did issue GASB 95 last May. With the pandemic ongoing, they felt it was appropriate to issue this standard in order to postpone other statements that were coming up in the near future to allow people more time to be able to address the issues at hand and be able to adopt them appropriately. So with that standard coming into play last year, there were no new GASBs that altered any presentation items or anything of that nature. So it was a pretty straightforward audit and financial statement process. So beginning on this page, I'll start with the IDA. The cash and investments totaled $2.6 million at the end of 2020, and that includes the CDs that were held by the IDA. This amount is down from 2019 by about $227,000. The unrestricted net position at the end of 2020 was about $2.9 million, which is a decrease of about $283,000 from the prior year. One particular area that I would want to note specifically related to the IDA was the impact that the pandemic had on the retirement system and the pension activity, because you will see that that probably had the greatest impact on the agency's financial statements. Because of the timing when the pension plan is, these amounts are calculated, would have been March 31st of 2020. Well, as you know, that was very much in the height of everything that was going on last year, and therefore the market was down. Because the market was down at that point in time, the plan's funding dropped about 10% from the previous year. So the numbers that are calculated here are evident of that impact. You will actually see the net pension liability that you see in the middle of the page there is $149,000 this year compared to last year's pension liability of $42,000. So that's where there was definitely an impact on your operations and your change in that position that you'll see on the next page, or excuse me, on page 22. The operating revenues for the IDA totaled about $178,000 at the end of 2020, which is a decrease of about $188,000 from the prior year. The penalty and fee revenue that the agency typically collects, in 2019, there were two very significant amounts, and that was a large piece of that decrease. As for the operating expenses, they decreased about $26,000 from the prior year. And in fact, many of the line items that you see here were down, but because of that amount that the pension adjustment had on the operating expenses in the salary and benefits line, it offset a lot of what you would have normally seen in that decrease. So in particular, the lease rent expenses were down about $39,000 and professional services were down about $24,000 compared to the prior year. On page 24, you'll find the cash flow statement. Compared to the more limited activity than what you would have seen in previous years for the agency, it's not surprising that the cash was down a little bit because of the natural operating expenses that you would have continued to have during the pandemic. Overall, the cash and cash equivalents, which is separate from any CDs or investments that you would have had, was down about $138,000 from the previous year. Does anybody have any questions on the agency specifically before I go into the loan corporation?
I've got one question. This is Doug Burwanger. I'm at the liability for the pension.
Yes.
Is the IDA now responsible to make up that amount? How does that?
Oh, sorry, go ahead.
No, just what's the process for this?
So the process is each year at March 31st, the plan is audited and an actuarial valuation is done of the plan.
Okay.
At that point, they determine how many investments the plan has compared to the actuarial valuation's anticipated liability across everyone in the plan.
Correct.
So once that is calculated, then they figure out, okay, we have, like I said, 10%, I think they were at 86% funded
Right.
at that point last year.
Mm-hmm.
Because of that, they take that additional, percentage, that's that gap percentage, and they allocate it amongst all the members. So what that pension liability reflects is your proportionate share of that liability had you had to pay out all of those benefits at this point in time.
Okay.
Okay, does that answer your question sufficiently, or?
Yeah, the only other question I have is, I know that we pay into the retirement system, and I'm quite familiar with it, as far as my town and the county
Sure.
government is concerned. So will we be seeing an increase then in our liability, our bill this year?
Because of the way the numbers are calculated, they're two separate items. So that's where the plan management and the state comptroller's office will assess those details and determine if.
Okay, so we don't know that yet.
Right.
Okay,
These
that's
numbers here don't directly correlate to the invoice is the best way to say it.
Okay, good enough. Thank you.
Nope, you're very welcome. Anything else on that
No,
one?
that'll do it for now.
Okay. And we're going to go back up to page 20, please, for the loan corporation. For For the loan corporation, the cash and investments totaled about 1.5 million at the end of 2020. And again, this includes any certificates of deposit that were held by the loan corp. This is down by about 863,000 from the previous year. The notes receivable outstanding at the end of the year was about 2.5 million compared to 2.45 million. So it was up a little bit gross. The allowance for uncollectible notes was at 101,000 compared to 110,000 in the previous year based on management's decisions with regards to the collectability of those notes. Therefore, the overall net amount of the notes receivable increased approximately 51,000 from 2019 to 2020. Some items of note here, there was $250,000 issued in new notes in 2020 and 207,000 repayments received by the loan corporation, not including interest. Of the 250,000 issued, 150,000 was issued from the gain funds that the loan corporation had received. In direct correlation to that, there was 374,000 in unearned revenues, and a majority of that amount, again, relates to unexpended gain funds that are still on hand. At the end of 2020, the restricted net position related to the gain funds was down to 88,000 from 160,000. And the unrestricted portion of the net position decreased from 3.85 million to 3.4 million at the end of 2020. Can you go to page 22, please? On here, you'll see that the overall change in net position for the loan corporation was a deficit of 498,000. Operating revenues decreased 49,000 from the previous year. The interest on the notes was down approximately 33,000. However, the recovery of bad debt expense actually increased from 5,000 to 10,000. As for the operating expenses, overall, they increased 314,000, but in this case, it's mostly attributed to the grant expense, which increased $321,000 compared to 2019. So this year, I think it was about 560,000, and about 551,000 of that was related to the use of the CDBG funds. On to page 24, please. From a cash flow perspective, the cash and cash equivalents decreased 604,000. And the primary reason for that was the issuance of those grants, the expense that you saw went out. So the net impact of all the activity noted above, that was probably the most significant impact that we saw. Does anyone have any questions on the loan corporation? Okay, if there's no questions there, then I'll go to page 31, please.
Nicole, just so the board knows that the grant expense that you mentioned at $500,000 plus was for the CDBG grants that we had to give out or pay back to the state.
Correct, yeah.
You said 31?
Yep, this is it right here. Another report that we issue, as I mentioned earlier, is your audit was also conducted in accordance with government auditing standards. So this report relates to the internal controls over financial reporting and non-compliance in accordance with government auditing standards. One thing that's a common misconception is this report does not provide an opinion on those controls or related compliance in regards to your financial statements. But on here, if findings were identified at the level of material finding, you would find a material weakness, a significant deficiency, or material non-compliance related to the financial statements. However, I'm happy to say that there were none of those items identified during this year's audit. And finally, if you go all the way to the end, the very last document, as part of the Public Authority Accountability Act, you're required to have this examination over investment guidelines. And this accountant's report is included with both entities separately, both the loan corporation and the IDA. This one is the IDA's copy, but they're both based on our testing. We did not identify any issues of non-compliance, and you appear to be in compliance in all material respects with the investment guidelines for the period of January 1 through December 31st, 2020. And the loan corporation looks virtually identical other than the difference in the name. Does anyone have any questions on the different reporting or any of those items I just mentioned?
Good.
Okay. Do you have the management report available?
I do.
Terrific.
Financial statements.
Either or will work because they both look extremely similar.
Management report.
Yep,
All
yep,
right, I'll just pull this one up then.
sure. Okay, if you want to go to page 1.
Just so the board knows, we have not rehearsed this, so.
Doing good so far, Jim.
All right, thanks.
I think you're doing a great job. I've been in some interesting meetings over the last year, so I think you're doing wonderful. On page 1 and 2, we have what we call our required communications. We are required to present this information to you in accordance with the Statement on Auditing Standards 114. And basically what these pages do is they establish the overview of the audit, summarize when the engagement was established, if there were any adoption of any new standards or changes in accounting policies. So we noted here that GASB statement number 95 was implemented. I would also on the second page there, we would note, or the end of the first page, beginning of the second page, there were no audit adjustments noted and no uncorrected misstatements. So that was very good. There were no disagreements with management, and we did not identify any material weaknesses or other findings of that nature, as I mentioned earlier. On page 3 is the presentation of any significant accounting estimates. So for this case, for the BAC, you have the allowance for uncollectible notes. That is an estimate that's included in your financial statements that's determined by management. So we're required to include that here to make you aware of that. In the IDA's management report, the additional estimate that's included relates to the pension system and any of those line items that are noted. It would also state the policy, what the estimation process, which is off of the valuation, and then our conclusion as it being a reasonable estimate to the financial statement. On page 4, you'll see the recently issued accounting standards. The most prevalent one that's up and coming is GASB Statement 87 related to leases. That's the one that really I think is going to pack a punch for most entities that follow GASB. So we'll work with the agency over the next year or so to make sure if you have any leases, which is much more common, and assess if which leases will actually fall under GASB 87 for both the agency and the loan corporation. And finally, because you have no findings, I don't have to go over any management letter, which is nice. There's just Exhibit A, which includes the representation letters that have been signed for all of the engagements pertaining both to audit and the examination engagements. And that concludes my presentation. Does anyone have any specific questions on anything with regards to the management report?
Well, thank you very much for your report.
You're very welcome. Thank you for having me.
And you are not required to stick around because you probably have someplace you'd rather be.
Well, it is a nice day outside, but I'll be working, so don't think I'm getting off too easy, that's for sure.
All right. And do I hear a motion to approve the reports as described? And
I'll
ask
make that
for-
motion, Judge.
All right, do I have a second?
Second, Judge.
All right. Does anybody have a negative vote? If not, this is approved by the board. And thank you again, Nicole.
Thank you. Have a wonderful day.
Thank you, Nicole.
Thank you, Nicole.
Thank
Great
you.
job.
Very
Yep.
nice job. Mr. Cole.
Can I ask a question now?
Okay.
I am on a different computer. And I see two phones down at the bottom. Did we get anybody additional at the meeting?
The two phones you see, one is Becky Ryan, the second number is Jim Ratowski, and then I believe Tom McCormick is trying to dial in, but he's not connecting with audio.
All right, so Jim, we'll add you to our attendance
Thank you.
and welcome. I don't think this be the first time I think I'm not sure about the virtual meetings, but I know we have, of course, we haven't had anything but a virtual meeting since, would you say midsummer last year?
It's been a while.
Hey, while we're talking about virtual meetings, how about we have a regular meeting in person? What's the status of that, Jim? I mean, I got no problem with having a meeting in the basement over in the Ag Center.
I'm okay with that. I defer to our chairman.
How about you, Judge?
Well, I think I don't know, it's more real, if that's possible, if we're actually in the same room.
Yeah.
But I think if anybody has an objection to attending in person, we can certainly accommodate them. And so they could come in by telephone if that's a lot easier and it makes you more comfortable. But I have no objection. We met once, I remember, in the cellar over there, did we not? I think
We
since
did.
the pandemic started. So if everybody's in agreement, we'll plan to do our next one live. which will be-
Mr. Chairman, before we move on to the next agenda item, I just want to give the credit due to Jennifer and Robin for the outstanding work they did in preparation of all our financial records and the outstanding audit that the board just heard. So many kudos to those two.
Absolutely.
That was a good report.
We all agree on that.
Oh, yeah.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you, Jennifer.
Okay. Let us turn to our action items. The first is a request from Lakin Holdings LLC, doing business as the Letchworth Base Camp for a sales tax exemption only. I'm not too sure how that is worded, Jim.
Yeah, I'm having difficulty pulling up the file to share with you. I think everyone has a written copy, do they not?
I do.
Yes.
All right, then I would propose that we just go with the written copy as we work through this. So if you bear with me a second. So the first project on the agenda, and we'll try to go through these quickly because we probably have the most projects that we've had in quite some time. The Lake and Holding project is a Mike Bellamy project. Mike has purchased two buildings from the village of Perry. They are two facilities located right on the Main Street area. One is 58 and the other one's 62 South Main. If you're familiar with Perry, it's the former post office and the Silver Grill. Both of those buildings were in practically a state of ready to be demolished. Mr. Bellamy acquired the properties from the village for $1. He won the request for proposals for the reuse of those projects. And it's coming to the IDA board because the project's eligibility does fit our adaptive reuse policy in our UTEP. That particular pilot is a 15-year pilot. The value of the estimated incentives for his project are not going to exceed more than $60,000. So we are not required to do a public hearing. So the decision the board is going to make today is whether or not to grant the incentives directly today to Lakin Holdings. A little bit about the project. You're familiar with Mike Bellamy. The board did the Silver Lock-In project over at Silver Lake, the glamping project, which has been very successful over there. For this particular project, he's estimating his project cost to be in the neighborhood of $295,000. Of that amount, he's receiving a New York Main Street grant for $200,000, and then he's putting in subsequently the rest of his money to finish the project. One of the things that's occurred, obviously, with most projects is the cost of materials have gone up. So the importance of these IDA incentives to a project developer has really dramatically increased. So I guess we have everything that we really have needed from this project, and we've talked with council. So we have an application in your board packet. You can see that he completed a EAF, environmental assessment form, a short form. The IDA was the lead agent on the seeker process. We determined that there was no negative effects to the environment, and therefore declared a negative declaration on the seeker piece of this. The cost benefit analysis, I think you can see in your packet what we're anticipating providing him in terms of incentives. The numbers are eluding me at this point. Right. Robin, do you have the numbers, Andy?
Yes, on page 8 of his application, you can see it at the top of page 8, but there's sales tax abatement will be approximately $12,000 based on about $150,000 worth of materials that will be eligible for the sales tax exemption, and real property tax has been estimated to be $48,000 for the buildings over the next, for the 15-year pilot.
Okay, thank you. So we have, like I indicated, we have the cost benefit analysis. We don't know the job numbers yet because part of his building will be leased to another user. And we kept a keen eye on if there's going to be a retail user in there, it cannot be any greater than 1/3 of the total project cost can be for retail. So we have, I think, everything in terms of the completeness that we need for an application. Really, the beauty of this project, it turns 2 Main Street buildings into viable structures. On the second floor of each of these buildings, he's putting in residential units. So we always have an ongoing need for residential housing in this community. So I would present that as the report, Mr. Chairman.
So I think we're all aware there's certain historical issues here. It keeps the legal community, or I should say legal community got a lot of business out of the Silver Grill.
Last time I was in there, it should have been demolished, Judge. I don't know how many years ago that was, but
Well,
so it stood up well over time.
I'm just kidding.
All right.
Also in your packet, Mr. Chairman, is a resolution that was prepared by council that the board needs to consider.
Now, do I find that at the end of the application?
Yeah, it should be.
I think it's page 10.
I have it right up on the screen here. I don't know if you can see that, Mr. Chairman. I can start at the beginning. Right there is what it looks like.
Okay. Aha, I have it. All right, does everybody, this would be on the application summary, which is been labeled B, capital B, and it's about halfway through. Everybody's had a chance to look at that, and
No, Chairman, it's actually, it's item A. They've all got resolutions, so that it's item A, and it's about page 10 on item A. It's right after the application part itself.
well, I'll have to rely on what you're putting up on the screen because I don't have one on my copy.
Okay.
I'll take that back. It is page 10.
Sorry.
I should know better than to argue.
But you're an attorney. You have to argue.
I'm just going to let that one. Okay.
Maggie and I said we'd have this problem. No, I'm just kidding.
All right. Okay. Is everybody together on this resolution? If so, if anybody wishes to make a motion to approve the resolution, I will entertain that motion.
I'll make the motion.
All right. Do I have a second?
I'll
I'll
second
second.
that. Oh,
Go ahead, Becky.
okay, thank you, Jim.
Is there anybody who is not in favor of this resolution? Hearing none, the resolution is passed, or A. Jim, let's move along to B.
Kelly's Garage, I think the board's familiar about this project because we brought it last month with a request for authorization to hold a public hearing because the incentives were going to be anticipated to be more than $100,000. The project is eligible under our 10-year standard pilot. We talked about the history last month about the Kelly's business being in business for 134 years. The project involves building a 16,000 square foot warehouse. Primarily, the majority of it's going to be used for the fabrication and assembly of large pieces of farm implement equipment that is customized for our large dairy operations. The total capital investment is projected to be $835,000. He currently employs 8 people, plans on creating 2 new jobs over the next 3 years. And we did a cost benefit analysis on this one. And the property tax exemptions over the 10-year are anticipated to be $120,000, and the sales tax exemptions are estimated to be in the neighborhood of $38,000. For the discounted value, we're looking at about close to $150,000 in incentives for this project. I hope I'm not making everyone really dizzy like I am myself, but because of the $100,000 incentives, we did the public hearing that was held this week. This is the public hearing notice that we put out to our official newspaper at the Batavia Daily. There's the application that was completely filled out and submitted by Mike Kelly. There is a certified signature on this as well. There's a little breakdown of what he anticipates in terms of how the costs are going to break out for the building, some of the site work, and some of the equipment. It's a nice little project and helps really support the ag community. And we're excited to be able to at least have the board consider to try to offer some incentives on this project. The numbers we've talked about, these are pretty good paying jobs as well. So these guys have really high skills. Here's the minutes from the meeting for the public hearing. The only people in attendance were myself and Robin. So the comments basically just talk about a description of the project. And then just to make sure we got somebody on the record beside myself, I asked Robin to say something about the project. And she added a nice little statement here about seeing the businesses expand in the town. And they've been around a long time. And we're glad to be able to help participate in the expansion project. So those are the public hearing minutes, nothing of significant to the board. And there you can see is there the resolution that has been prepared by council, which basically summarizes the description and things that we just walked through. And then just so the board is aware, we also have at the end of this resolution, the EAF, although it's not listed on this copy I'm scrolling through, but I can assure you in your board packet, they filled out a short form environmental assessment form. And again, the IDA was the lead agent on this project for the seeker process. And we have issued a negative declaration as this project not having a significant impact on the environment. So with that, Mr. Chairman, I would send it back to you. And if there's any questions, I'd be happy to entertain those.
All right, has everybody discovered the resolution? Which
Yes,
is on right after the public hearing minutes, which should be page 11, 12, 13, although it's numbered 1, I guess, the resolutions. And it consists of 6 pages. Is there any discussion or comment on this resolution? If not, I will entertain a motion to approve the resolution as drafted.
I'll make that motion,
All
Chairman.
right, do I have a second?
I'll
I will
second
second.
it. Jimmy can do it.
All right. Is there anyone who does not approve the resolution? All right. Resolution is passed. Or adopted, I guess would be the word. Okay, Jim.
All right, item number C is the Hillcrest Industry Project. Again, I'll go through this very fast since it appeared before the board last month. As you may recall, it's eligible for a standard 10-year pilot project. Hillcrest is proposing to build a new warehouse facility for their existing product. They're talking about a building of 31,250 square feet. It's going to be a pre-engineered structure and will house their manufactured glass beads that are made from recycled, disposed of glass. They make 2 products. One is a glass bead that's sold for traffic signage and stuff because of its reflective nature. The second product that they make out of the glass beads is a blasting media that's used for sandblasting in industrial settings. It's a nice little project. As many of you may recall, Hillcrest, when they first set up in Attica, was using coal slag from the old Kodak power plant. And when that power plant got phased out, they started looking at other sorts of abrasive material, discovered there was a very large need to dispose of or reuse recycled glass. So this product they developed in Attica, and they put it through very 4 or 5 really high temperature furnace and turns this glass into these little tiny beads that are working very well for the industry that uses that type of product. Here's again their application. They They're located on Favor Street, as many of you know. The project or the business mostly has been taken over by Dan Kirsch's son, Derek Kirsch, who has done a really nice job over there. Young guy, very ambitious. I think the thing that people don't realize is currently over there, they have 26 jobs, and that's quite a bit of jobs. And I think it's probably the largest private sector employer in Attica with those types of job numbers in there, anticipating creating another 4 jobs as a result of this project. It is almost $1 million project. There is no bank financing required. They're financing it internally. They are currently going through the approval process for getting their building permit. Their estimated incentives, and we did run this through the cost benefit analysis, is going to be $50,000 in sales use tax exemption, real property taxes of $259,000 over the 10-year period. The application has been certified and signed by Derek Kirsch. The job numbers are there. There's the cost benefit analysis that I just highlighted. At the last meeting, the board authorized us to do the public hearing. Here's the public hearing notice that we submitted to our official newspaper. We did receive or did the public hearing this on April 6th at 3 o'clock virtually, just like we did the other one. The only people in attendance once again were Robin and myself. So we just basically described the project. And then again, I wanted another name on the record. So I asked Robin to say something, and her remarks can be found here on page 5. This project she was excited about, she says. So
I read these over last night, Jim. It's almost like standing room only when you guys go out for a public hearing, you know? You should offer to serve free beer and probably get more people to come.
I think so. I think we'll give that a try, maybe. So there's the resolution. The company has gone through the secret process. They did fill out their environmental assessment form. Once again, the IDA served as the lead agent on the secret process. And after going through the secret process, we have determined a negative declaration that this will have a minimal impact on the environment. And so subsequently, we would encourage the board to consider adopting the resolution in support of this project.
I think everybody has a copy. Again, it's in kind of the middle of the packet for the project. I ask everybody to invite any discussion or comment on the resolution before we vote. If not, I will entertain a motion to approve the resolution as drafted. Do I have a second?
I'll second it.
Judge, I would make that motion unless it's been made.
I kind of skipped that step, I guess. Sorry.
I'll make the
Right.
motion, thank you.
I'll second it.
All right. Is there anyone who does not approve of the resolution as drafted? If not, it is adopted. All right. Jim, you're up again.
All right, this next project listed as D on the agenda is the Sun East Highview Solar LLC project. This is the project in the town of Castile that has been transformed from one company to another. Originally, this project was started by Geronimo Energy approximately 3 years ago. They sold their interest in this particular section of a larger project to Sun East Highview Solar. And the company has gone through its local approval process. And because the incentives are going to be greater than $100,000, a public hearing is required. A brief description of the project can be found here, where they're talking about building 20 megawatts of solar on leased land of 83.4 acres. And I do have a map that I'll pull up quickly and show the board, but it's essentially the area of Middle Reservation Road near Hathaway Road. in the town of Castile. They are planning on creating a job, and we have their application here. They are asking for all three benefits, as you can see: sales, mortgage, and real property taxes. This is again the application to show you that it was completed and fully submitted. The total project cost is over $20 million, $20,092,838. So this is a sizable capital investment this company is making into Wyoming County, and in particular the town of Castile. Just so the board knows, for authorization of this public hearing, there is a community host agreement that's being hammered out, and I let the company know, or Robin let the company know, that it does require an 80-20 split, meaning the megawatt dollar value has to be split with 80% of the dollar value per megawatt going to the town, and then 20% will go to the pilot. On this particular project, the value of the megawatts is $5,000 per megawatt. So the application was certified, and here is the map, and I'll give it a spin here. I don't know if everybody can see that. Where you see the numbers, the parcel numbers, those are the 4 parcels that will be involved with this project.
That's a pretty productive land there, isn't it, Jim?
I have not looked at the soil typing of it or anything at this point, Joe. My plan is to see if the board will authorize a public hearing, and I'm planning on bringing the developer into the next meeting, so he can be questioned more thoroughly about some of those items. But I haven't done the soil typing or anything like that, Joe, if that answers your question.
Jim, the 5,000 per megawatt, is that on an annual basis?
It is, and it escalates 2% a year over a 20-year period. And again, Jim, that $5,000, 80% of that, goes to the town, and 20% goes to the pilot, which is then divvied up between the town, the county, and the school district.
Okay.
Who was the landowner? Do you know, Jim?
Primarily Walt Farina.
Good enough.
For historical perspective, how does that compare with the windmill project?
The windmills, I mean, it was some time ago, and pricing has certainly changed for the price of power, but for the windmills, it was $8,000 per megawatt. For solar, Jim, our first project that we did in the town of Bennington, they valued the power at 3,500 per megawatt. Again, it's based on what they can get when they sell the power, and in areas have different pricing in different spots. So the town of Pike one that we did a little while back, the Delaware River one, that one was valued at $5,000 per megawatt as well.
Jim, I have an amendment to the host community agreement for the town of Arcade with Invenergy. It actually is increasing the town's portion of the host community agreement, and that is $5,950 per megawatt. Okay, so that gives you an idea what the going rate is.
So the only thing you're asking is to approve a public hearing at this point.
That's correct, Mr. Chairman. And again,
Jim, I think
I would like to bring
Jim,
the developer in. So
yeah, and it would be real important to have the soil and water to provide how productive this land is.
Absolutely. I don't know, Becky. It may not be at the highest quality,
Okay.
and, but I'm already looking into that. But,
You know, the other thing, like I said, all the local approvals have been in place and they've had all their public meetings, and so far there hasn't been anybody that really has expressed a major concern about this project.
the windmills can be worked around to some degree. With these solar projects, there's no agricultural availability on that property.
And it does say it's being leased right now. Just a question is all.
Jim, one thing I was a little unclear on, you said the numbers, I have the map that's kind of hard to read that after photocopied. You said the numbers that all start with 112. Those are tax map numbers, I presume?
They are, yes.
And you said all of those would be involved in this?
Yeah, I mean, not completely. We're not talking about total coverage. Where did it go? I think it's before Kevin's resolution.
The total project that they predict is gonna cover about 83 acres. And of course, those 4 parcels together are a lot larger than 83 acres. So they're gonna take just a piece, you know, just a little section of each of those parcels. So, and I would presume that if it's gone through the local and there hasn't been a lot of kickback on it, they're probably taking some of the most unproductive parts of those parcels, you know, following suit of what other solars have done.
I think this project originally came in proposed as a 17 megawatt project, and then they went through the planning board, both at the local level and the county level, to be able to get authorization to take down some kind of scrubby trees and stuff of that nature, so they could not necessarily take as much productive farmland.
Right.
Mr. Chairman, you looking for a motion for approval of this hearing?
Yes, we need a motion in order to
I'll make
approve
that
us
motion.
holding the hearing.
I'll make that motion.
All right,
Thank you,
do I have a
Joe.
second?
I'll second.
All right. Is anybody not in favor of authorizing a hearing? If not, the motion is successful.
Okay, I've got a question though.
Okay.
And I don't have a problem with the vote. Jim?
Yep.
Probably 99.9% of these hearings are non-confrontational. If we were to have a certain amount of empathy one way or the other, how do we weigh that out and in regard to our vote as to whether to approve the benefits that they're asking for?
Yeah, a good question, Doug. I mean, there have been a number of IDAs across New York State that, you know, have laid down the law and said, you know, we don't really want these projects. Some have, you know, are accepting of them. And then there are some IDAs that are just getting overwhelmed and they're starting to restrict the participation from the IDAs. And to be perfectly honest, without the IDAs, these projects from a financial standpoint just don't work.
Right.
So it's really ultimately a decision on the part of the board about how big of an appetite you have for these types of projects moving forward. I mean, they all play into, you know, the governor and New York State's energy goals that we're trying to reach here. So they're in support of that. They're obviously green energy. They're not destroying the property. I guess they're leasing it for 20 years. You know, it could still produce crops after that. But the challenge we have is these farms are renting an acre of land for anywhere from $1,000 to $1,200 per acre. If you're going to rent your land for crops, you're looking at what you guys know more than I do, Doug, 100 and a quarter an acre.
Yeah,
And these contracts are 20 years long.
yeah. You know, there's 2 points to consider here. Yes, you know, we're trying to be more energy efficient, but we also have the point that a property owner should be able to have the right to do whatever he wants with his property. And I'm not advocating either way. I'm just saying these are things that we're going to have to consider when it comes time for this vote. That's why this public hearing, it'll be interesting to see what kind of involvement we have at this public hearing, because this is kind of like the first shot over the bow here, isn't it, with these solar? I know we've had a couple of smaller ones, but this is a pretty big deal, 83 acres. And it's in the heartland of the agricultural business of Wyoming County, you know, the Perry Cast Isle area.
Does it make sense to look at increasing the fee per megawatt on an annual basis?
I mean, we can talk to the developer about that. I mean, there's more.
Or see what other IDAs are charging across the state?
Yeah, I mean, everyone's charging like a 1% fee, anywhere from 1 to 1 1/4 of the total project cost is what the fee that the IDA gets. You know, the challenge is, like Doug said, there's a lot of different things going on here. Yes, there's green energy, there's efficiency, there's the landowners are getting a benefit. The town is getting a community host agreement, and the pilot is supplying a benefit to the county and the school district. And the IDA is getting a benefit because we're getting a fee. I mean, so there are a lot of things to weigh, and I think Doug is right. There needs to be a.
Well, and the reason I bring it up, Jim, and all the rest of the people on the board is we've had several discussions at the Agricultural and Green Energy Committee on the Board of Supervisors about this. We had a presentation just 2 weeks ago with our real property director about her experience. She came here from the town of Henrietta, and of course there have been projects that have been developed there. Very interesting commentary on that. So I mean, there's a lot to consider here, and you know, typically, as I said before, there isn't a great participation in these public hearings. So it'll be interesting to see how this all shakes out. So I'm just want everyone to be wary that this could be a hot topic. And Jim, as you said, these companies have got this calculated out. If they don't have everything lined up, like the green energy tax credits from the federal government, if they don't have IDA participation, it does not become financially feasible for them to do the project.
You're correct.
Chairman, this got brought up also a few weeks ago at the Farmland Protection Board meeting. And we discussed, I'll go back to what Doug referred to just a few minutes ago, that you know, a farmer has a right to do with his property what he wishes. But land is rated from 1 to 10. It goes 1, 1A, 1B, then 2, 2A, and B, and down to 10. And a resolution was asked to be, we did not, at the Farmland Protection Board meeting, to write a resolution that keep productive farmland out of these type of projects. I know you're fighting against a farmer's wishes, his own property. I know the farmer that we're talking about here. I know he'd like to have this project. But again, I've tried to pursue a resolution, which most likely maybe wouldn't go anywhere, to keep this good farmland, productive farmland, out of these type of projects.
I think that's something that needs to be done, initiated at the county level. It really needs to be looked at, and probably the sooner the better.
But I got talked about that there, but I had a feeling it wasn't going to go anywhere. But I will pound on this every time I'm at a meeting.
Yeah, but that's.
I don't believe this land is in the highest rating. And I'm not going to discriminate this man's property. but it's not the highest rating, but it's still, it's, good land for hay production or he's using it anyway.
Jim, maybe going, and Judge, maybe going forward, it might be, beneficial to us to, as a board, to, have maybe soil and water come in, maybe, someone come in and educate us on the farmland in the county so that we have them, we can see on the maps. So anything coming in the future, we would be proactive on some knowledge.
They can do that, they're very good at it. I don't wanna jump ahead of you, but I might be over there at their office when we're over here. Or tomorrow, it's getting late for them now. Fact is, I think I did bring it up to the one gentleman a while ago. He may already have that information.
It might be something for a future meeting for,
We got very good
the idea.
technicians over there.
Yep.
That's Soil and Water Department.
Mhm.
Well, I think if people are interested in that, we could take a time at this meeting next month to have somebody come in and just go over it.
Absolutely, Judge. That can be very.
That's my opinion anyway.
Thank you, Judge, because I think these projects, they're going to be coming fast and furious, I think.
And the question I have is, as you remember, we had all this proposed legislation and summaries and so forth. Trying to say about 5 or 6 pages of proposed bills in the legislature right now. And I think that's another thing we should be keeping an eye upon, because the temperature is changing pretty rapidly in Albany right now. And for a while, and Jim, you correct me if I'm wrong, it was some proposal that basically all of these things had to go through the governor's office. That was one of the proposals, and that they were basically going to take these local boards and the IDA right out of the equation. But, that's something we can't really control here, or
Correct.
we have a voice, but we can't control it.
You're right, Judge. Do we still want to follow through with this hearing? I don't know if that would be a matter, would it?
Even if they don't go through the IDA, Mr. Chairman, that there's a small 5 megawatt project over in Attica where they're approaching each of the taxing jurisdictions to do a pilot. So they're trying every which way, I guess, to get some relief on these.
I think we should still go ahead with the public hearing, because then we get the temperature of the people there too, but also to go in with the knowledge of how this land is rated. Which, that should be pretty easy for this 83 acres, I would think.
Yeah, I will work with the soil and water and get that information to the board, and I will present it as at the next meeting, and also have the project developer come in so that the board has all the information they need.
Thank you.
But just because we have a hearing doesn't mean we're committed to approving it, at least at this point.
Correct.
That's correct.
Mm-hmm.
All right, but do I have a motion to schedule the hearing?
Already did that.
Yeah, I think it was done, wasn't it?
I think it was already
Yeah.
done.
We made the motion
Yeah.
already.
I already made the motion.
Well,
Yep.
I'm glad you're
Pulling
here
Jim
to keep.
Mikowski.
That's right.
Yep.
Okay, very good.
I might go over. He's there to see you. Tomorrow.
And our next item, Mr. Pierce.
Yeah, is Draskow. This is, there's an email that was sent to Robin from Carl Draskow. Carl is proposing an expansion project. He has some challenges with some property lines that one of the pieces of property is in the IDA's name, his existing building, because it was done under our old form of business, which was a sale leaseback. And the new project, infringes on property that Carl owns in his own name. So we have two different owners, and you can't do a project when you have two different property owners. So this request comes from Carl asking the IDA board to amend the sale lease agreement. This is for the existing pilot he has on his building to a lease agreement. This will open the door for him to begin completing his expansion project. So we have two items here because actually Carl's coming in for a request for IDA assistance for the expansion project as well. But this is step one, is the amending of the sale lease agreement to a leaseback.
I assume we don't have any great legal difficulties if we choose to do this, do we, Kevin?
Yeah, not any legal difficulties, but this is, we are really kind of recasting the current transaction, as Jim said, from a sale leaseback to a leaseback. So we just have to essentially recharacterize the papers in the transaction first. And then that will be the platform from which we can then do the expansion project, which is a separate project for the company. So this is as Jim said, this is a necessary first step to make that happen.
And just so the board knows, this first step is coming at a cost to Carl. He has to cover the legal costs associated with this amendment.
Anybody have any comment or further discussion? If not, I'll entertain a motion to accept to change, is just one part of the property, right?
Yes.
The sale, I'll just say the property involved to a leaseback agreement.
I'll make a
And
motion.
Judge, there is a resolution in the packet that describes the transaction, so I think
Oh,
that.
okay. I didn't even look. I got you.
My scrolling finger got tired, Kevin. I didn't even get down there.
I'll make the motion, Judge.
All right, do I have a second?
I'll second that.
All right, anybody oppose? If not, the motion is carried. Now, okay. And the resolution starts on the back of the email from Carl to Robin. All right, let's move along. And action item F. Jim?
Yeah, we just have to back up and do step 2 for action item E, and that is a request from Carl for having the board authorize a public hearing for his expansion project. So.
Oh, I missed that. Go ahead.
No problem. Up on the screen is the application description for his project. He's outgrown his building, obviously. He's proposing a new building expansion that will be on the, I believe it's the south end of the building, a 66 by 66 foot pole building. The capital costs are projected to be $690,000. Currently, Carl employs 19 people, is going to create 3 new jobs over the next 3 years. So this is critical to Carl's continued growth. And as the board knows, it's not our first step in helping Carl. We've done several projects for him, and including financing projects as well. And Carl has performed very well on all of our projects. He's followed through on and exceeded our expectations. Here's the application that Carl has submitted. It was certified. Again, the total project cost, we're estimating the sales tax exemption to be $25,000 for this project, and the real property taxes are going to be $99,000. That's over the 10-year pilot. And he's also requesting the mortgage recording tax, which will be a savings of approximately $60 or $6,000. The application was certified. There's the job numbers that we talked about briefly. And with that, Carl, and it's not in this packet that you see, but Carl has completed the environmental assessment form. And the IDA has completed part 2 and part 3. And it is not in, we'll have it available for the next meeting should the board decide to move forward with it. But the secret process has been started and the IDA will be the lead agent on it.
Okay, so
I
all
thought
we
it was-
need, excuse me, go ahead.
Oh, I was just going to say, I thought it was interesting in his project information, and it's very, very true too, about finding new employees willing to work. And that's a big reason he's got to build this, is so that he's got just the day shift, because there's not employees that will work the off shift. And it's true.
Carl
Very
shared
true.
with us that when the pandemic came along, his business slowed down significantly and he laid people off because he was up as high as, I think Robin told me, like 27 employees. And now with the unemployment situation the way it is, he can't get those folks back.
Yep.
Okay, do I have a motion to authorize a hearing?
I'll make that motion.
Do I have a second?
I'll second that.
All right, is there anybody who opposes? The motion is carried. And then back to F again, Jim, please.
Item F, I didn't include anything in the board packet because the board's already addressed it at a previous meeting. We are asking authorization to sign the 5-year sublease agreement with Wyoming County for the IDA space. I listed out on the agenda that the total square foot is 1,770 square feet of space that we're taking at a rate of $14.24 per square foot, which includes the utility share of the utility costs as well, for an annual rate of $25,204.80. So I am asking the board for authorization to sign that 5-year agreement.
I'm all right, Judge, Chairman.
All right, do I have a second?
I'll
I'll
second it.
second that. Oh, let Doug second it.
All right, is there anyone who opposes? All right, motion is carried. And now, Jim, we're not giving you much of a break. Could we have your report, please?
Yeah, I'm sorry I have to talk too much. I did abbreviate my board report because we had such a lengthy action items on the agenda. So I just want to let you know the project in the town of Pike, the camp, the church camp that's going to be converted to a public campground is moving forward. So that project is still on board. I remember last month I talked to the board about the boat livery that was formerly Max that would have been purchased and now is Krabby Bill's Boatyard, and you know, they were asking for some project assistance. I haven't seen anything in terms of an application for financing, but ironically, on the other end of the lake, another group has purchased Colzel's boat livery. And in that little area, there's some small little cabins. There's a access for, you know, releasing small boats into the outlet. So the owners of the property have reached out and are possibly looking for some IDA help. The plan is to put in a small campground, a picnic area, maybe an Airbnb type of element. They're going to do watercraft rentals and rehab of cabins for overnight lodging and things of that nature. So I don't have anything in writing yet from this company, but Silver Lake's attracting a lot of attention over there. So we'll keep you posted on that. TTI Industry in Perry, we've talked about that project before. We do have an application in hand from them. We didn't bring it to the board today because we do not know the status of their local approval process. As the board may recall, they're planning on putting up a building on Adrian Road next to the racetrack in the town of Perry. So I'll let you know where that goes. I did get approached by one developer who wants to do a microbrewery, craft brewery in Arcade. He's a startup kind of guy, and he's looking around for land. He recognized that the IDA has a couple parcels there. Obviously, one, the 4.28 acres we've been holding in reserve for our hotel project, which, by the way, they're still very interested in doing something. And then we have the 28 acres property off Steel Avenue. And he's wondering if the board would consider peeling off a piece of that and selling it for the development of a microbrewery for the manufacturing and sales and retail sales of craft beer. He's looking for acreage in the neighborhood of 3 to 4 acres. My personal opinion is we have kind of billed it as a light industrial site, and I don't know if the board would want to consider converting it into more of a multi-use site. I'm not sure it's the best location to establish a microbrewery. Usually those are better suited in the downtown area where you can get pedestrian traffic and things of that nature. But I promised this gentleman I would bring it to the board, so I'd be happy to take any comments that anybody has about that.
Doug, what are your thoughts over in Arcade?
I think, as Jim just said, there are plenty of empty storefronts in downtown Arcade. I think when our thought process when we purchased the 28 acres is we're thinking, a light industrial, as Jim just mentioned, and as I recall a discussion, we thought that there may be some type of a manufacturing facility that will use the entire parcel, or at least half. And so if we start to divide it up like 3 or 4 acres at a time, that's going to defeat that purpose. So I would prefer that we leave it whole and, offer the guy opportunity elsewhere downtown. There's plenty of space in downtown Arcade.
Makes sense.
Yeah, thank you.
Okay, I appreciate the comment.
I just drove up through there last week one day, Jim. That's quite an area. And it's the only spot left in the village of Arcade that has that kind of potential for industrial, other than the Answick property across the road from McDonald's there, so I think we're wise to hang on to it for the time being. I think this economy is going to turn around, and there's going to be a need for parcels like that.
Just so the board knows, I did submit that 28 acres to a very good, kind of a food-related business lead that was provided by the Greater Rochester Enterprise. But it hit the nail on all the things that the project was looking for. So I'm hoping to hear back from them that at least maybe we can get them out for a visit. I also had, I'm participating in a group out of Buffalo called Invest Buffalo Niagara. They just embarked on a very exhaustive industrial development strategy where they're looking at available buildings and sites. So 2 consultants as part of that study came out and walked the property with me. They spoke very highly of the site, thought it had some great amenities. And in particular, we're excited about the low-cost power and things that are available there. So
that municipal power is a big number.
Yeah. All right, Mr. Chairman, that was the feedback I was kind of looking for. I appreciate that. And the last item I had on my agenda, or not, my executive director's report is, I just wanted to speak quickly about a discussion I had with a gentleman by the name of Jeff Carlino, who's the president of the Hiram Lake Association. He's very concerned that the people and residents around Hiram Lake were not adequately notified about the Alley Cat Wind project that was approved not only by New York State and the IDA, but also by the town of Arcade. And I know that they have also reached out to Becky at the county. And so I took some time this morning and went through and listed some of the public meetings that were held in Arcade for this project. There was one on, two meetings actually on June 11th in 2019, one at the high school, one at the Arcade Fire Hall. There were two more held in December at the Pioneer High School. And if you go to the New York State Siting Commission's website and pull up a public listing of everybody that wanted to be contacted about this project, since it's been going on since May of 2017. The first public contact on the list is a gentleman by the name of Douglas Zamilis, who was representing the Lake Hiram Club. So this gentleman has been receiving emails right along from the beginning from the State Siting Commission on this project. So I just wanted to make sure the board, if you get approached by Mr. Carlino, that you have that information. When we did the IDA's public hearing, we held it on September 3rd, and then the board made a decision on September 30th. And I guess wanted to notify the board that there's this concerns out there. But you know, all the approvals have all been in place, and I don't know how a group of this large of 50 some residents had not heard anything about this project.
And when we held our town board public hearings on this project, there was not one person came to speak about it, not one. So everything's been followed to the letter, and as supervisor of the town, I still haven't been approached by anybody from the Lake Hiram Club.
And I referred them to the town of Arcade, Doug, as you know.
Yeah, Becky and I have talked about this. I haven't heard a word.
The reason I brought it up is Chairwoman Ryan said that the gentleman indicated he might want to appear before the IDA board. So Becky shared that with me. So I just wanted to bring it to the board's attention that, you know, if he approaches us, he hasn't approached us directly, but if he does, just kind of looking for some guidance.
Well, I have to say, I appreciate the timeline, Jim. That's very helpful as far as other public hearings. And I knew that our public hearing had been noticed correctly, and I knew no one had been there.
As have the town of Arcades, you know, they advertised, everything is in place.
Right. Nope, I appreciate it. I think just as it is right now, leave it.
And part of the agreement with Invenergy on the town's part was they undertook the payment for our attorney, Jim Wojcik, to represent the town at all of the meetings that Invenergy held in regard to this project. And I'm happy to say that Jim attended every meeting, and any information that needed to be brought back to the town, he did that. So I'm quite confident in our position as being right on as far as being legal with every aspect of this project. And I have no problem with Mr. Carlino coming to the IDA board.
Okay.
I think the conversation you just mentioned, Jim. Here's what happened. You know, and as I read the the information which was submitted to the chairwoman, you know, the old property line, it's supposed to be 1 mile from the first turbine to the property line of a residence. Well, the property line that they're talking about is the property line that's right up next to Route 39. The residences are probably a quarter to a half a mile north of Route 39. So I guess that would be something you could argue about legally, but there aren't any residences within a mile, I'm sure, from the Lake Hiram Club.
And just for what it's worth, I think Jeff Carlino is an attorney. I don't know if he's
Yes.
practicing.
Yeah.
Okay.
Oh, he is. No. And I don't know if he's practicing either, but he's the president of the club, I believe.
Yeah, that's what he said to me. So I think we wait and see if he wants to come and meet with the IDA and,
I
Yeah,
wouldn't
we can
invite him.
talk.
I'd just say, he knows where we're
Yeah.
at.
yep,
Want to talk, come on down.
just like to go to the town of Arcade as well.
Yeah, I'd like to have him. I can explain it
Yep.
to it quickly.
The attorney's directory shows him as practicing at 233 Franklin Street in Buffalo. I don't know.
Thank you for that.
Welcome.
That's my report.
So is it fair to say that we're going to leave it to, until we get an actual request to come to the meeting from him conveyed to our staff? We are not going to just go ahead and schedule it on what's gone on so far. Is that position okay with everyone?
I think that's pretty consistent with anybody that comes before the board, right? I mean, they
Exactly.
make a request.
Yeah, if you want, there's rules for the board, so.
Mhm.
And we all have in our recent experience, this idea about getting sued. And let's not go into that, but I could just see, but it's, lawyers have to eat too, so. Anyway.
Thanks, Judge.
You guys look pretty hungry.
That's my punchline of coffee, anyway. Is there anything else? If not, excuse me. Somebody
No,
else?
no other business.
All right, if there's no further business, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn the IDA meeting, and we'll move immediately to the Business Assistant Council meeting.
All right, Mr. Chairman, just allow me to unlog, unstream, and then restream, if you would, please.
I'll
Can you
make
get
that
a mo-
motion.
Thank you.
All in
Thanks, Joe.
favor?
All right.
Okay, it's carried.